Guys, it's Dan Book Nook Noggin here, and I want to talk to you about a book that I just finished last night. I want to talk to you about the conspiracy against the human race, and it was subtitled something like The Contrivance of Horror or something like that. But this was written by Thomas Ligotti. For those of you who are aware of Thomas Ligotti, he is someone who writes cosmic horror or Lovecraftian horror, as you know, some people call it. So I decided to read this because I was craving some cosmic horror. And I knew this was a short one. It's only like 272 pages, so it's relatively short. And I gotta say, this cover, there's two different covers I've seen of this. There's this cover, and then there's another cover where it's just a silhouette of a person in a doorway. And I gotta say, the other cover just screams, "Come on and read me, you know you want to read me." I gotta do that creepy voice because creepy cover, creepy voice. But yeah, I had forgotten that this is not a fiction book at all. For those of you who came here because of Ligotti, and you're like, well, the story title and everything sounds like it's going to be a fantastic cosmic horror book, I'm sorry to let you down and let you know that this is a work of nonfiction. I'm going to give you guys a lot of disclaimers, a lot of warnings to make sure you really want to get into this. I'm not even gonna put in the title that this is nonfiction. I will admit it's gonna be kind of clickbaity because I want you to watch this video so you know. The more you know. But yeah, I forgot that it was a work of nonfiction. It is very much a book about philosophy. It is a book about philosophy in regards to cosmic horror and supernatural horror. I will admit this was a very, very hard read for me. When I first started reading this, I was thinking teen me would have loved this book because it would be right up my alley. While some days I feel like I am a pessimistic person, I am kind of the half glass half empty kind of person a lot of times, just because of the things I've gone through in my lifetime. I've had a lot of tragedies and ordeals in my life, so I tend to lean towards the glass half empty. Although there are days where I feel myself, I have to be optimistic some days, because I feel like if I'm not, then what hope do I have for my future and stuff like that? And you don't want to hear all that. But let's get back to talking about this book that's about philosophy. Ligotti goes, and he's done some research. There's a lot of philosophers. I've never heard of these people before. He talks about some people like Nietzsche, and some other folks that I'm kind of, but I don't remember all their names, because I will admit, this was kind of a boring read. This was a very, very slow burn of a book, because I was not expecting nonfiction. I was not expecting philosophy. But it is, I'm going to say, in the be-all, end-all, by the time, because I pushed through this book because a few people on Twitter were like, hey, I've had this book on my TBR forever. I really want to know what you think of this book, because I want to know if it's worth reading or not. So that's why I pushed on through it, because there was one point I wanted to DNF this so bad. But yeah, a good, I'd say at least half of this book, Ligotti talks about pessimism and just negativity, and a lot of the stuff he's talking about kind of reminded me of, now this is for my comic book people, it kind of reminded me of Thanos and Darkseid, the anti-life equation, where he kind of talks about how, are people really self-aware, or are we all just puppets? A lot of philosophy about, are we even really existing? I mean, are we the only animal on this planet that is self-aware, that it's aware that we are alive and have thoughts about other things? And the whole idea of the self, and then he goes into, people who are very pessimistic and just want to see basically the anti-life, who want to see the death and destruction of everything that makes this world worth living. So yeah, there's a lot. It's very depressing. Like that was one of the reasons why I found myself kind of not wanting to, because it's so depressing. And I'm sometimes, I will admit, I'm a half glass person sometimes, but I found this just dragging, slogging through this. I found it to be so depressing because, and I enjoy cosmic horror, but I'm not one of these people who wants to see the whole massacre, mass extinction of our world. No, I don't want that. Even though there are some motherfuckers who deserve to die, there are some bad apples out there. There are bad actors everywhere. But we all deserve a chance to live, and that's why I kind of found this like hard to get through because of that. There were some times where he kind of throws in pop. He talks about different religions, especially Buddhism, because I guess Buddhism is always trying to like kind of get rid of the self, and like how trying to be nothingness in order to achieve nirvana. And I kind of tried to skim through that stuff because I'm not a very religious person. And that's another thing I'm going to say. If you are someone who is of a religious persuasion, or if you are someone who tends to lean towards religion, you're probably not going to want to read this. I can think of a few people that I'm friends with in BookTube and in the book community who are kind of leaning towards the religion side, and I know they're sub to me, and I'm going to say this book's not going to be for you. I don't think that I don't recommend reading this, because it does kind of go over some really, like stuff with the supernatural. He kind of talks about like evil and all this other stuff that just may upset you. So I'm just throwing that out there. He does use some passages from some authors, different literature. Some of them were not all horror authors. He used a couple examples of Poe and Lovecraft and some lady who I'd never heard of before, but I think I might look her up because her book sounded interesting. And then he mentioned Into the Darkness, which I forgot that author's name, but he's not. It's a classic literature author. He's not someone who's known for horror. Then he went over William Blatty's The Exorcist, which I thought was kind of interesting. And in retrospect, after having like kind of read this stuff about supernatural, cosmic horror in regards to philosophy, it kind of helped me appreciate some of the books that I just read and made me see them in a different light. It was kind of like, oh, okay, that kind of makes a little more sense. So if you kind of want to get more out of your cosmic horror and your supernatural reads, then maybe you might want to check this out. I thought this was an okay book. It was alright. I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars just because it was so depressing in the start and it was so hard to get through. Like, it was a short read and I probably should have plowed through this in no time flat, but because it was so depressing, like a good half of this book is all about pessimism and how like these pessimistic philosophers committed suicide and how they just want to see just the death and the failure of all life. And it's so depressing, and who wants to hear that stuff, but I mean, it did have its good moments, and I have read Ligotti before. I've read a few short stories from him, but I was kind of hoping this was going to be a full-on, like, bigger story than short stories. But, like I said, I forgot that it was nonfiction. But there's not much more I can really tell you about this book because it was so short. It did kind of ramble on in regards to pessimism. Pessimism was a big part of this lecture on like whether we are alive or if we are self-aware and all of that, and the person being a self, and if there is really a God and stuff like that. That's why I'm saying if you're religious, like especially if you're a Christian, you probably will not want to check out this book. But it is what it is, and if you guys want to check this out, of course, as always, for you guys in the US, I will have a link to Amazon to check this one out. I'm going to find it on bookshop.org, and if you could, please buy me a coffee or two. If you came here looking for book reviews and book recommendations, please hit the, please check out my link down below. Hit the subscriber button and hit that notification bell. That's all I got for you guys. This has been Dan. This has been a book about philosophy, which is totally, I don't really do review books about philosophy. I mean, I do sometimes review nonfiction books. It happens. It happens. There's been a few in the past that I've read and enjoyed, but I'm going to say this is one of the ones that wasn't as good or as great as I kind of hoped or expected it to be. But it is what it is. Thank you for watching. This has been Dan. Stay healthy and be good to each other.